playGoodell emphasizes that players should stand for Anthem 118. Commissioner Roger Goodell says the NFL supports the causes behind the players' protests during the national anthem but says he still wants them to stand. 118 President Donald Trump criticized NFL players who lodged pre-game protests, saying in a speech in Alabama on September 22 that he wished those players would be released. He also encouraged fans who are offended to walk out of stadiums. Several players and coaches reacted strongly to Trump on social media, and players joined by coaches and owners, in some instances across the league, knelt, locked arms, raised their fists and even refused to come out of the locker room during the national anthem in Week 3. There were several more protests in Week 4. Vice President Mike Pence left the 49ers Colts game at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana, Week 5 because of protesting that took place during the anthem. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick started the pre-game protest of racial oppression and inequality in the United States last season by sitting during the national anthem before a preseason game, then kneeling during the anthem throughout the season. Previous protests this season: Week 6, Week 5, Week 4, Week 3, Week 2, Week 1 preseason. Here are the players who protested in Week 7. Most recent updates: First, New York Giants defensive end Olivier Vernon knelt during the national anthem before Sunday's game against the Seahawks, as he has done in the previous 3 games. He was inactive because of an ankle injury. Jordan Ryan on Seattle Seahawks. Michael Bennett and several other members of the Seahawks defensive line sat on the bench during the national anthem before Seattle's game against the Giants. Also sitting were Cliff Avril, Sheldon Richardson, Frank Clark, Marcus Smith, Quinton Jefferson, Brandon Jackson and Nazir Jones. Linebacker Michael Wilhoit took a knee while center Justin Britt stood with a supportive hand on Ben Ott's shoulder, and guard Ode Abushi did the same with Jones. Brady Henderson. Los Angeles Chargers. For a second straight week, left tackle Russell Okung stood with the rest of his teammates during the national anthem, raising his right fist. Okung attended a meeting with NFL owners and Commissioner Roger Goodell earlier this week to discuss how the league will handle anthem protests moving forward. Okung recently wrote an open letter to other NFL players on the Players Tribune, with the goal of overcoming uncharted territory by opening a line of communication and responding with one voice as players. Eric D. Williams. San Francisco 49ers. For the second week in a row, the 49ers had 7 players who knelt during the national anthem before Sunday's game against the Cowboys. Safety Eric Reed, linebacker Reuben Foster, linebacker Eli Harold, safety Adrian Colbert, cornerback Quan Williams and receiver Marquise Goodwin were among them, but the 7th player was inactive and could not be identified. The rest of the team locked arms and stood throughout the playing of the anthem. Nick Wagner. Tennessee Titans wide receiver Rishard Matthews remained in the locker room during the anthem on Sunday for the 4th consecutive week because he is protesting social injustice in the United States. The rest of the team stood. Linebacker Wesley Woodyard and defensive lineman Harrell Casey raised a right fist after the anthem. Cameron Wolfe. Miami Dolphins receiver Kenny Stills, tight end Julius Thomas and safety Michael Thomas remained in the tunnel during the national anthem before Sunday's game against the Jets. All 3 players knelt before the Week 4 game against the Saints in London. Miami now has a team rule that players must stand if they are on the sideline, but they have the option to remain in the tunnel. James Walker. Los Angeles Rams outside linebacker Robert Quinn raised his right fist in the air and punter Johnny Hekker put his arm around him as a sign of solidarity, as has been the case for most of the season. No Rams players kneeled during the national anthem from London. Alden Gonzalez. New Orleans Saints. Most of the Saints players briefly knelt in unity before the anthem against the Packers, as they have done in their past 2 games. They then all stood during the anthem, with several players and coaches locking arms. Mike Triplett. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts wore black t-shirts with the words, "We will" on the front and stand for equality, justice, unity, respect, dialogue, opportunity on the back during pre-game warm-ups for the 4th straight week. The players stood with their arms locked during the national anthem for the 3rd straight week. Mike Wells. Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Marcus Peters sat on a training table behind the bench, and linebacker Yuki Maligui sat on the bench during the national anthem before the game against the Raiders on Thursday night. Peters has been sitting for the national anthem all season. Adam Tyker. Oakland Raiders. Marshawn Lynch remained seated during the playing of the national anthem before the Raiders' Thursday night game against the Chiefs, as he has since the preseason. He was surrounded by Raiders staff as he sat on the bench between Gatorade buckets. Lynch has not said why he has remained seated during the national anthem since joining the Raiders. He wore a t-shirt before the team's Week 4 game that read "Everybody vs. Trump." Paul Gutierrez.